And in today's video / live stream, we're going to be looking at my latest 2020 presidential election prediction, looking at the recent numbers we have from polling data, looking at recent events that have happened during this election, looking at all of those things coming together and shaping this electoral map as we get closer to Election Day, which now falls less than 1 month away from Americans casting their ballots for the President of the United States. So before we get started, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to get notified when we post our next video, as well as follow us on social media to get more election updates on Twitter at PPT_purple, on Instagram at Purple Political Talk, and visit our new website, www.purplepoliticaltalk.com. So let's get started. At this point in time, the Democratic Party is in a very good position nationwide. Joe Biden is performing very well nationwide. And a lot of their safe states are being consistently safe, which is pretty self-explanatory. However, during this election cycle, we've seen a big shift among safe states, especially amongst the Republican Party, who has lost a lot of their states. This shows that the Democrats are in a really good position when it comes to safe states, as they're very stable with the states they have, and they really aren't losing many states. And at this point in time, their basic map looks very, very well. States like New Mexico, a state the Republicans could have easily contested, not contested anymore, because, the Democrats have put a lot of time, money into solidifying the state, and Republicans have given up on some of these states, which they might have had the chance, most notably the state of New Mexico. Now, going on to the Republicans, what states are they winning by more than 50%, and what states are they constantly winning? So, currently, they have states like Idaho, Wyoming, Utah. These are all states that would have traditionally gone to them. Now, the more interesting thing here is not what states are going to them, but rather what states are not. So that's going to be very interesting to watch, because some of these states should be going for the Republicans if it was a normal election by over 15 points. South Carolina, look at Missouri, look at Montana, look at Alaska. These states have shifted, and for many reasons. These are states that have very solid Republican DNA that has simply just shifted away from the Republican Party, whether it be because Donald Trump is unpopular in those states, whether it be because these voters want someone more liberal, whether it be that some people just don't like Republicans in general. These states are narrowing up, and overall, this is what our electoral map looks like going into our contested states in the lean, likely, and tilt columns. So the map right now is 100 electoral votes for the Republicans to 190 for the Democrats. So what states are the Republican Party going to win by a likely margin? So at this point in time, there are some states that the Republican Party has a pretty solid grasp on, but it's not solidified completely. These states include the states of like Montana, Alaska. We have states like Missouri, states like South Carolina. These are all states that have traditionally voted very Republican. And these are states that, in normal circumstances, are very Republican states. However, since everything has shifted, and by a lot, we're seeing a phenomenon where the Republicans in states that used to win by over 15%, those states are narrowing down. In South Carolina and Missouri, we could say it's mostly because of increasing African American populations and increasing voting turnout. In Alaska and Montana, it's a little bit of a different case. In Montana, it's a little bit of Donald Trump's unpopularity in some parts of the state, which have definitely increased. And in the state of Alaska, it's a general dislike for Donald Trump. And remember, in 2016, we had a race where both candidates were disliked evenly. So a lot of these voters just ended up voting for third parties. Third-party candidates and fringe candidates, if you could call them, those candidates are really not going to have an impact on this election. And in 2016, they truly did have. So at this point in time, a lot of those voters that went to even Gary Johnson, but mostly Joe Stein in states of Alaska, where there's a lot of liberal voters, those voters might transfer on easily to Joe Biden, which means that these seats are going to narrow down. Does this mean that the state of Alaska is going to come down to the very, very last vote where they count everything and it's going to be the biggest toss-up of the year? No. However, these states are narrowing down a lot, and to a point exactly where Donald Trump is performing a lot worse than he did in 2016. So now that we looked at our likely states for the Republican Party, let's take a look at the Democratic likely states where they would win by from 5 to 15%. And this is where we've seen a very big shift over the last couple of days as President Trump has been diagnosed with COVID-19, and a lot of the Republicans in the White House and even some congressmen and aides to all these very big Republicans, notable Republicans, are getting sick with COVID-19. A lot of these states have shifted, not only because of that, but then with the way the Democrats have been able to paint this whole pandemic on the Republicans. So at this point in time, these states include states like Nevada, Colorado, Virginia. We have states like Colorado, Virginia. We have states like New Hampshire. We have states like, at this point, Minnesota and Michigan. These are all states that, looking back towards in March, before the pandemic really intensified in the United States, we wouldn't have expected such a very big, drastic change for the Democrats in these states. However, the pandemic, in addition to the Black Lives Matter movement, and in addition to generally Donald Trump being somewhat unpopular, or he's being made perceived unpopular, at least in some cases, in these areas, these things just add up for disaster. We have recent polls in the Rust Belt states in general where we have the Democrats up by 10 points, 8 points. Very big margins for states that only went by less than 1% in 2016. And, I mean, these states are all different in their own ways. Nevada and Colorado, you have a lot of these suburban populations and Latino populations that are truly big parts of the electorate in this state. And both of those communities have been trending towards the Democrats. No change this election. And if anything, if Hillary Clinton was able to win here in 2016, without a shadow of a doubt, Joe Biden should be able to win here, and by more. Because, again, Joe Biden is more popular than Hillary Clinton. So that's the case for those two states. Now, let's take a look at the states in the Rust Belt. Like I said, the economy, COVID-19 handling, and the president getting COVID is really going to hurt him in these states. We've seen it in the polls. Plus, Donald Trump heavily relied in-person campaigning to rally up his base, rally up independent voters, because let's be honest, in 2016, what did it for Trump? It was those in-person rallies that created a lot of voter enthusiasm, which in this point, it's going to be hard since he's going to spend only the last 2 weeks of the last month campaigning in person. So it's going to be very tough for him. And again, that probably closes the door for the presidential debate that will be held next week. And I think these things are truly going to affect Trump in these states. And at this point, we're already seeing effects in the polling data. And I mean, states like Virginia voting suburbanly, and I often make this analogy with New Hampshire and Virginia. They vote similar, yet they're very different. One is a very big small town state. The other one more is like medium-sized cities and suburbs type state. And I think at this point in time, Joe Biden has a solid grasp on both. And looking at a nationwide level, by just taking a look at our likely states, this shows how dominant Joe Biden is on the electoral map currently. And as of today, the chances of victory for Donald Trump have severely gone down. And, I mean, it's because of many different things. But majoritarily, it's the blame he's getting with COVID-19, the blame with the economy, and all those different things the Democrats have been able to use politically to make and take advantage of this situation. So those are all our likely states for the Democratic Party. And now let's move on for the lean states for both parties, where we will look at states that will go by more than 1.5%, but for less than 5%. So currently, we have a lot of states for the Democrats where they're leading a little bit, but it's not astronomical. Most notably, or it's not more than 5%. That's what I mean by astronomical. But most notably, it's the state of Arizona, the state of Wisconsin, and the state of Pennsylvania. These three states are crucial if Donald Trump wants to win this election. Donald Trump will need to win at least two, preferably all of these states, to win re-election. Without these states, it's going to be very, very tough, and it's going to get very, very tough. And at this point, this is what locks it up for Joe Biden. He reaches the 289 electoral votes with his lean states. Currently, in the state of Arizona, we're seeing a lot of blue trends where Democrats are performing very, very well, especially amongst the Phoenix suburbs, especially amongst other parts of the state which are trending more Democratic. In 2018, we saw Kirsten, the Democratic candidate, win here in the Senate, and Joe Biden is performing very well in this state. What is one thing that helps Donald Trump out here? He has an increasing amount of support on the southern part of the state due to his immigration policies. In other words, the border wall and border security. So those two things must even out, right? The suburban vote and things like that. However, Joe Biden is gaining a lot more suburban vote than Trump is gaining down in the South, which really might hand this election to Joe Biden. And thinking about Arizona politics, Maricopa County is all that matters. And at this point in time, Maricopa is going for Biden, and Biden should be able to win the state by around 2 to 3%. Going on to the two Rust Belt states. These states are a little iffy, and I was contemplating calling these in the likely column. However, I pertain from doing so because these states, historically, I mean, if you look at 2016, the data was wrong. And again, the data, if you look too much at data, we're never going to get anywhere because data is not always right. It's an indicator, but it's not always right. So, I mean, here what we're looking at is a race that's going to be severely contested because, I mean, these are states that Donald Trump absolutely needs to win. However, Joe Biden should be winning here from anywhere from 4 to 6%. I would put it that in the median range where it would fall. However, he could definitely win by more, and in the polls, he's leading by around that same margin of area, 6%, 5%, 7%. I would say that these fall in the lean column because, again, I think Donald Trump has somewhat of the effect of a silent voter in those states. We talked about this in past videos where Donald Trump truly does have some silent support, where people that don't say they're supporting him because they don't want to be retaliated against, all those different things. And I think these two states those things are very prominent. There is no way to really measure that, but I think that the polling data is going to be slightly off in those two states. And as I see the current race, Donald Trump should be able to lose in these states. However, lose them by a little bit of a slimmer margin than he had thought. So those are all our Democratic lean states that currently we put for the Democratic Party that would go between 1.5% to 5%. Now let's take a look at the lean Republican states. So currently there's a couple lean Republican states, them being Iowa, them being Texas, and then being the second congressional district in Maine. These are all some pretty big calls because at this point in time, this map could easily be shaping up to be a Biden landslide victory come November 3rd. However, these states and the congressional district have reasons for voting for Trump. In Texas, we have a state that has been solid for Republicans. And yes, Democrats have been slowly trending and had a big jump in 2018 for their Senate race. However, the thing with Texas is the Democrats need to flip so many votes that even, I think they might have reached a ceiling, at least for the next 4 years. Come 2024, the Democrats could easily win here. But right now, looking at just recent data, which we have, which isn't very big for Trump, and other past historical voting records, I would say the state of Texas currently falls under the lean column for the GOP. And looking at the state of Iowa, this is a state that is a truly conservative state. It has conservative morals, although a lot of their voters are very swingy. And in this state, Donald Trump has that appeal that Joe Biden simply doesn't. Donald Trump appeals to those farmers. Donald Trump appeals to those voters in more rural areas of the state, which are a big part of the electorate in the state of Iowa. And at this point in time, with a lot of momentum Republicans have in the state, we could see Donald Trump winning there. And I think we're currently looking at as well, a range of 2 to 3% victory for President Trump. It could definitely be tighter. And as we receive more data about the election, that's going to become more and more increasingly apparent. So at this point in time, the Republicans really don't have any more big states in the lean column. We also have Maine's second congressional district, which at this point in time falls under the lean Republican column because I project it would probably fall under the slim margin of 1.5%. This district has always been interesting because we usually don't get a lot of data. It's very isolated, at least when it comes to political science. And I think at this point in time, we're currently looking at a race in the state of Maine, second congressional district, that's going to be pretty solid for the Republican Party. This district voted for a Democrat in 2018 to represent them in the House of Representatives. they're backing down. And again, that's an individual race, and the individual races change. I mean, we have Democrats winning in Oklahoma and Kansas. However, in this district, it's been trending more and more conservative, and I think Donald Trump could probably win here. Joe Biden could make a run for his money. However, I think Donald Trump might narrowly edge it out in that state. So those are all the lean states for both the Democrats and the Republican Party. Now let's take a look at the likely states for this election. At this point in time, there is 4 likely states with 1 congressional district. These being the states of Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, and Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. Currently, we could see that the Democrats have a slight lead in 2 states. Those being the states of Florida, North Carolina, or in 3 states rather, and Ohio. They've constantly been leading in latest polls. We're seeing very good trends when it comes to voter registration for the Democrats. We're seeing very good trends with voters, like in Florida, for example, felon voters starting to vote. In North Carolina, we're seeing increased African-American turnout as well as college-educated turnout. And in the state of Ohio, a lot of those minorities in Cleveland are starting to come out and vote through registering for vote, and they're expected to turn out high. In addition, we have a lot of these Rust Belt voters, which may have voted for Trump. Those are now switching a little bit. And overall, the Democratic Party is doing very, very well in the state of Ohio. And currently, we can say in all these seats, Biden is leading by less than 1.5%. And they all have their upsides for the Democrats where they're gaining a lot, but they're also losing some support, if not keeping things stable. In Florida, for example, they're fighting with the losing support from the Hispanic community. Not by huge, by huge margins, but again, that doesn't reflect a change with Hispanics nationwide. In North Carolina, they're fighting against a very, very conservative moderates in the state, which really ideologically conservative moderates in the state. So that's going to be hard for them. And then in Ohio, they're fighting just a very big gap of votes they have to fill and flip, although that is very fixable. And at this point in time, with the data we do have, betting odds, people that put their money on the election, these seats are all going to Biden. And Joe Biden has done pretty consistently well here, and we're seeing pretty consistently very strong numbers for former Vice President Joe Biden. Now, looking at the last states on this map, we have the state of Georgia and the state of Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. At this point, I think these are the 2 tilt GOP states where I think Donald Trump will narrowly edge out former Vice President Joe Biden by around a margin of 1%. So, in the state of Georgia, we're dealing with a lot of changes. A lot of the moderate conservative, I would say the conservative moderates in the state of Georgia suburbs, that might have voted for Stacey Abrams in 2018, those suburbs are flipping from the Democrats to the Republicans, or losing some support because of the Black Lives Matter movement. In addition, in the state, we're seeing polling data for President Trump, although there are some recent polls that we're seeing from Joe Biden winning in the state. This state is going to be very close. And of course, at this point, it doesn't really matter because Joe Biden is expected to win by a large number. Call it a landslide, if you will, 351 electoral votes. That's debatable if it's a landslide or not. However, what we do know about this this race in the state of Georgia, it's going to be extremely close. Republicans will probably edge it out narrowly. And looking at the state of Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, going to be also a very, very tight race where we're going to see not as much money spent because, again, this is a race that gets buried in the political mainstream news, whatever. And I think at this point in time in the state of Nebraska, the race is going to come down to like a last couple of votes. But I think Donald Trump might actually edge it out just because of the simple reason that Joe Biden is in this big inspirational candidate for the Democrats that usually takes that district. If you look at Democrats who have won here, most recently Barack Obama has been someone that is very, very, very passionate. And look at polling data from 2016. Bernie Sanders was leading Donald Trump in the hypothetical polling. And overall, that I think that tells us that Donald Trump might be able to win this state, just looking at some of the historical trends. So overall, this is my 2020 presidential election prediction as of October 6, 2020. And this gives us an accurate depiction of what the election looks as of today. Again, we have 2 weeks, almost 2 to 3 weeks, until Americans go cast their ballots. If I'm correct, it's actually 3 weeks on the nose. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see. If you're an American, please go cast your ballot, no matter if it's for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Just make sure you go vote and make your voice heard. And at this point in time, this election might be changed a little bit. However, the very different things are not going to have impact now that Donald Trump's very far behind in the election. And overall, this tells us Joe Biden is the favorite to come and win the election come November 3rd. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. Hope you enjoyed the live stream, and I will be going live on a separate live stream currently so we can discuss other things right now. And so guys, I'm gonna open the live stream in a couple seconds so you guys can keep on talking. So hope you guys enjoyed the